Shortly after dismissing each of the members to the group to different tasks, Lee, Mike, and Bonnie had arrived at the museum and began to search inside for supplies and survey the area for anything useful. Unfortunately, all the glass windows surrounding the place was shattered to pieces by the time they got there. This meaning they would not be a good place to stay when Rebecca gives birth. While they were searching inside the museum, Bonnie gave Lee and Mike some advice that they may want to consider while they're there. Guys, we should keep an eye on in the woods. Make sure these walkers don't get a jump on us. I'll watch from the left side, you watch the right, Mike agreed, while he stood there with his arms folded and surveyed the area for anything useful. He soon shifted his attention over towards some security shutters that this caught his interest. Lee was searching around the center of the museum. He loves places like this when he was a history teacher, before all this began. He remembered the Back to the Past when he took a class trip to the museum once, and it was like they were once there. He loved a place like this. Sometimes he wished he could find a place that was walker-free and start over. Lee shifted his attention back towards one of the cannons and observed it carefully. He knew for a fact they were fake, but he wouldn't imagine having to fight one of these with walkers. They could kill a bunch of them only with one shot. Wish they had these. They would come in handy. And they would be really loud, Bonnie added with a slight grin across her face. True, Mike agreed, from over where he was searching in a small box. I hope we find anything useful in there to take back. Anything so good so far you found? No, nothing we could take back, Bonnie answered, while Liz said checking out the display table. Unless you want some broken glass, let's just give this place a good look over before we leave. Lee shifted his attention away from the cannon, instead focused his eyes on the empty water fountain. He approached it and pulled the button to see any water would come out, but it was dry as a bone, unfortunately. Damn, empty. He proceeded to go back towards the area where the cannon was to do a double check around the area to make sure that it was certain that he did not miss anything useful. When he arrived on the other side, but he found nothing that would be missed. A gray Civil War coat was folded up neatly next to one of the cannons. It may look ridiculous to wear, especially in this day of age, but it could be used as a blanket for Rebecca's baby. He leaned down and retrieved the coat, calling out to Bonnie and Mike to his success. Hey guys, I found an old coat. Great job, Lee. A coat like that could be useful, Bonnie admitted, placing her hand on her hip as she observed the coat in his hands. We might be able to use this as a blanket for the baby, Lee suggested, since he was unable to find any use for a coat like this. He was, for one, not going to need it, and Clementine had that ski jacket to keep her warm. This should do the trick. Good job, Lee, Bonnie praised, but her smile soon dropped when the memories of what she did in the past began to haunt her, and all the things that she did when she worked for Carver. Lee, I feel awful about everything that happened in the past. I was the one who brought Bill to your ski lodge. I'm not sure if you will always think of me like that, and I won't blame you if you do. We can't change what we did in the past, but we could change what we do in the future, Lee reassured her, speaking some similar words he used to say back when he was a teacher. You're with us now, Bonnie, and that's all that matters now. Bonnie smiled slightly in response and nodded her head. She was happy to no longer be in Carver's group. She can't imagine what would have happened, especially seeing the horde move in. She was sure glad to be in the group now she has Lee as a leader. She shifted their attention towards Mike, who had just came over what Lee discovered. Hey Mike, Lee found a coat. That's, good. Mike trailed off, trying to find the right words that would not make him sound weird. He tried to find and make sense, while Lee and Bonnie merely stared at him and waited for an answer. Well, the color, I don't think we should put Rebecca on a confident coat, because, what happened in the Civil War, but, it's better than nothing, I suppose. Yeah, I suppose, Bonnie agreed, understanding what he thought it was a bad idea. I didn't really think about that. Like I said, guys, we can't think about the past. We can think about the future, Lee reminded the duo, who both gave him supportive nods before turning back to their previous jobs. Now that they had a blanket, all they needed was clean water. Lee made his way over towards the security shutters nearby in that Mike was looking earlier, but he seemed to have lost interest when he first checked the box inside the shutters for anything useful. But there was nothing there, unfortunately. Nothing in that box, Mike told Lee from where he was standing. I already checked it. Lee placed the box down to the ground and noticed his security shutters had a slight gap at the bottom. He placed his hand under them, and with all of his strength, he pulled upwards as much as he could. He managed to open up quite a bit, but the shutters got stuck and would not go any further. Shit, it's jammed. He leaned over slightly and looked at the now bigger gap for anything useful. A smile came across his face when he saw a big water inside. It looked fresh and clean. Hey guys, I found the water. Bonnie and Mike made their way back over towards Lee when hearing the announcement that he found water. It's bottled and clean. Exactly what we need, Lee told them. As he approached the door with a twisted doorknob, he discovered it was locked. Damn, it's locked. Looks like we're gonna have to kick it down. That'll make an awful lot of noise, Mike warned, as he tried to figure out an alternative way to get inside without using brute force. You're right, Lee agreed. Was it folding his arms together, turned towards the security shutters and observed its size. I wish we brought Clementine. She'd be able to fit for there. Nothing we can do about it now, Bonnie replied. She approached the gasp and looked inside. She might be able to unlock it if she could reach. I think I might be able to lean in and unlock it. Got nothing to lose. Bonnie leaned down and placed her left arm around the gap as much as she could, searching for the lock on the door, unaware that there was danger ahead. Bonnie thought she found the lock, but panicked when she felt something grab her arm, yanked her forward, hitting her head against the wall in process. Oh shit! Something's got me! Bonnie! Mike panicked. He immediately ran over towards the door, attempting to kick it down. He no longer cared about making a lot of noise. Lee, help her! Don't let it bite her! I know. Lee was already working on it before Mike even had to ask. He grabbed Bonnie's arm in an attempt to pull her free before she was bitten. Oh God, help! She cried, fearing that this was the price she was going to pay for everything she did in the past. Just hang on, Mike shouted. Wizard continued to kick down the door with all of his might, even despite the fact that it was in doubt the strongest member of the group. He struggled to pull it open. Lee pulled it back with all the strength, desperate to get Bonnie free. He and Bonnie continued to pull together, but the walker would not let it go at all. After a few seconds of trying to save Bonnie from death, Mike had finally broke the door open, immediately ran inside. He grabbed the walker by its neck and forced it to let go of Bonnie. It slammed it against the wall. He threw it against the ground on its stomach and held it down. Kill it, quickly! Lee did not hesitate to kill the walker. He raised his hatchet and stabbed the walker directly in its brain, ending it. Mike panted slightly as he got up and walked over to the dead walker, placed his hands in his knees. That was too close. He shifted his attention towards Bonnie, who had her hand placed against her left eye. You okay, Bonnie? I just got a bump. Nothing to worry about, Bonnie assured, but she did feel quite a bit of pain where she had hit her eye against the shutters. I'll be all right. My God, that would have been one of the stupidest ways to do. What the hell was I thinking? Good thing you were with us, Mike, Lee admitted, unable to imagine how this would have gone without the help of someone stronger. I don't think I would have been able to open the door quick enough. Thanks. No problem, Mike replied. He then turned his attention towards Bonnie and observed her arm. He did notice a couple of injuries on her arm. They did look rather old and recent. Bonnie, you weren't bent, weren't you? No. These are old scars, Bonnie assured. It's nothing. All right, Mike believed her before he shifted his attention towards the big water bottle. And to his relief, there was 2 of them to bring back to the rest of the group. At least we got water now and a blanket. All right, we better get this stuff back as soon as possible, Bonnie suggested, turning around seconds later and walking around just to do one more check around the area. Mike and Lee decided that they would be the ones to carry the water back to Parker's Run. Mike easily picked up one of them with much effort, using one arm to hold it. Lee struggled a little bit to pick up the other one, but at the end he was able to carry it. He had to use both of his hands, of course. The duo made their way back outside, a small room, and set the bottles down until it was time to go. You know, this water may look like a lot, but this could all run out pretty quick, Mike admitted. Was it standing back out? We're gonna have to make it last. Hell, that's going to be tough. We'll figure something out, Lee assured, stretching his arms after placing the bottle down, knowing he was going to have to pick it up again soon. Everyone's going to need some water. I hope so, Mike admitted. as he stated the most important thing they need to consider. Rebecca's baby's going to be hard on everyone, including Rebecca the most. Between us two, I gotta admit she's not looking too good. Lee, Mike! The two put their conversation on hold when Bonnie called them over in a yelling whisper. The duo walked over towards Bonnie, who ducked down behind a wall when she beckoned for them to be quiet. When the trio were together and ducked for cover, they paid attention to what she called them over for. Wizard sitting a few feet away was a raccoon that appeared to be eating something, unaware of the three humans behind them. Just wandered in her like it owned the place, Bonnie whispered. She shifted her attention towards Lee and Mike. She turned back towards the raccoon with a slight smile across her face. Looks like it could be a good meal. If we catch it, that is, Lee reminded, picking out a little flaw in Bonnie's plan that she did not seem to realize. Mike slowly stood up and placed his hands upon the wooden railing, keeping a close eye on the raccoon. He was sure was hungry, but could not remember when the last time he had a decent meal, and he was put back in the yard of Carver's community. I'll catch that raccoon if it's the last thing I do. I'm starving. Rebecca could certainly use some meat too, Bonnie said, before she turned towards the raccoon, had Feud spotted her and screeched towards her. The raccoon ran off and Bonnie soon gave the cheese. Shoot! Catch it! The trio ran towards the raccoon's last location, but couldn't find it anywhere. Where did it go? Mike asked, Wizard surveying the area for the raccoon. Did it go over there? He pointed at the display table. Lee looked around for a few seconds until they met their target, hiding behind a shelf. There it is! Lee moved quickly towards the broken window. Mike reminded him where he was, and Bonnie stood in the middle, cutting off the raccoon's escape. Bonnie slowly moved towards it, her expression determined not to let it escape. As quick as a flash, Bonnie leaped forward in an attempt to grab the raccoon by its tail, but she missed her chance and the raccoon ran off through her legs. Oh shoot! The raccoon attempted to escape by running towards Lee's direction, where the shattered windows were or used to be anyway. Lee jumped forward to attempt to grab the raccoon, but he was not fast enough and the raccoon escaped. He stood up and turned around as Mike and Bonnie ran towards him. Mike pulled out his Glock 17, prepared to shoot the raccoon. But if he did not, that would be a doubt tracked a lot of walkers leading the way to Parker's Run. He placed his gun back in his pocket. The raccoon stared at them. She stopped by one of the headstones and continued making clicking noises at the frets of her two cubs emerged from behind her. This would explain her aggressiveness. The raccoon was trying to survive to protect her young, just like Lee and the rest of the group were doing. When seeing the humans were no longer following her, the mother and her cubs turned around and ran back in the woods for safety. Great, now I'm even hungrier, Mike admitted, watching their fresh meal ran off in the distance at the speed. He then rubbed his head together and placed his hands on his hips. How the hell do we get in the world to chase a raccoon for food? Mike, I'm not gonna lie, I'm kinda relieved that she escaped, Lee admitted, not afraid to confess his feelings right now. It had a family and tried to protect them, just like us. Yeah, I know, Mike agreed. Me too, Lee. At least we got water and blankets, Bonnie reminded them. Finally, it was time for them to leave. Now they had to get to their friends as they needed. Lee and Mike both picked up each one water bottle while Bonnie carried the coat. Together, the trio left the museum and began to make their journey back to Parker's Run. Even though they had the supplies they needed, the trio knew they still needed shelter to keep out of the cold. They only hoped that if Clementine and Jane had found somewhere better, and maybe somewhere with better supplies. During the time Lee and Mike and Bonnie departed from the museum, Clementine and Jane arrived in a nearby building by the river. They began making their way up in the small observation deck was that they were walking. Clementine could not help but notice that Jane had been silencer than usual and decided to ask if anything was on her mind. Jane, are you okay? Yeah, I'm fine, Jane assured. Her expression looked a little sad. A lot has happened to us, and sometimes I don't know if it's a good thing that you're here to watch my back. Clementine was a little puzzled with her words, but nevertheless she decided it was good enough for her to answer. She was so surprised that Jane actually raised a smile for once, and not just a little one either. Jane, are you sure you're all right? Well, is anyone really okay nowadays? Jane asked her, changing the subject to almost immediately avoid suspicion. Come on, partner, let's check out the place, Jane replied, as she began running towards the observation deck. Clementine followed closely, but could not run as fast as Jane could. The duo climbed over the stairs to the observation deck. Once they were up there, they found a small shop that looked like it was good and big enough for them to stay in. But unfortunately, it was locked down by the security shutters. There was a cannon in the center of the deck that was most likely either fake or no longer functional. "This looks like a pretty good place," Jane admitted. She kneeled down to the padlock and tried to figure out how to open the shutters. "Let's hope no one's got in here and took whatever's inside. There could be anything useful in there." "Think there could be food in there?" Clementine asked, knowing that there was something Lee had missed to find. "Just what I was thinking," Jane agreed, retrieving her nail file from her pocket while she attempted to pick the lock with it. "I'm going to try and pick the lock. You know what they say, versatility is not overrated, but if you could find something bigger, that'd be helpful." Clementine nodded and wandered off, and proceeded to find something useful to help Jane. She walked over towards a poster wall nearby about the Civil War. She knew that Lee would have liked something like this, but then again, he was going to a museum. She was about to search for something in the trash can, with the odds of something useful and very slim. She surveyed the rest of the area when Jane suddenly shouted, "Oh, shit! You okay?" Clementine inquired. "Yeah, I thought I almost had it," Jane admitted, kneeling down towards the padlock again, attempting to pick the lock once again. While she did that, Clementine made her way over towards one of the telescopes and looked in the distance. She could just make about any building behind a tree that may be a good place to go if they failed, and if the museum was not good to stay at. "There's a couple of buildings by the river. I think one of them is a church." "No way to cross the river, unless we find a crossing that's not too far from here, for Rebecca to make it," Jane replied. Clementine leaned out of the telescope and was about to search for something useful, but a worried expression rose upon her face when she spotted someone down below, heading their way, and it was certainly someone they did not know. "Jane, someone's coming!" Jane immediately drew her attention towards Clementine and crouched down, slowly making her way towards the stairs. She leaned over, covered slightly with Clementine behind her, focused her attention towards the figure limping towards the stairs. "Ah, shit, he's coming up this way. He could be one of the bandits." "Do you think we should run?" Clementine suggested, not sure if it was the right thing to get in this fight with strangers. "It's too risky," Jane admitted, having the feeling whatever the stranger was might come here looking for shelter, and the same with them. "We can't risk leading him to the others, especially to Rebecca. We should keep an eye on him and see what he's up to. Last thing we need is him telling his friends about us." "I'll distract him when he gets up," Clementine suggested the second time, willing to take down the stranger rather than run, if it meant protecting them. "You sneak up behind him." "Good idea," Jane agreed. She leaned forward around the corner again, where she met the eyes of the stranger again, who was now halfway up the stairs. "Shit! Hide!" The duo quickly snuck away from cover before they were spotted. He could be armed for all they know. Jane went around the corner and walked down the steps inside the building, just to stay out of sight. As for Clementine, she stayed behind the cannon, hoping that he would not be able to see her there, at least until she distracted him to make sure his back was turned to Jane. Clementine remained in cover as the stranger did not see her. He slowly moved around the cannon as the stranger passed her, unaware that he was being watched. Clementine poked her head up slightly to see if the stranger was trying to stuff bags that he had in the trash. What in the world was he doing? Clementine did not have the time to figure out what to realize how to distract him. She finally stood up and greeted in a friendly tone, hoping that he would not shoot her, even if she was just a little girl. "Hi." The man swiftly turned around, hearing the unknown voice, holstered a single-action army revolver in his free hand, and aimed it towards Clementine. He tried to keep an angry face, but his hand was trembling in fear. While being at gunpoint, Clementine had the choice and the chance to observe the man. He looked around his late teens, early 20s. He had brown hair, blue eyes, and wore glasses, but one of the lenses was cracked, and he looked around the same height as Jane. He wore a purple and gray hoodie with blue jeans. His physiognomy was unknown. On top of it, he wore a leg brace to which explained his limp. "Relax. I just want to talk, that's all, Clementine assured, placing her hands out as she attempted to talk to him into putting the gun down. My name's Clementine. I just want to know why you're here. Nothing, he answered, in deep Russian voice accent. He continued aiming his gun towards Clementine, but decided to introduce himself to her. My name is Arvo, and I don't want to shoot you, Clementine. I really don't. I'm going to go, and you are never going to see me again. I don't want to shoot you or anyone. While speaking to Clementine, she shifted her attention behind him to see Jane slowly sneaking up behind him, as silent as she could. But she had no idea what Jane was going to get him since she no longer had her weapon. I don't want to shoot, especially a Melikeda Devoce, Arvo admitted, slowly backing away as he was preparing to leave. But he panicked in fear when he felt something grab him from behind. Jane grabbed his arm and pulled him back, snatching the revolver out of his hands. She pushed him forward and aimed his weapon towards him. Don't move. Put the bag down. Arvo glared with a hateful expression, but he wanted to life, so he followed her orders and dropped the bag. Clementine, make sure he doesn't have any weapons inside his bag, Jane ordered, keeping Arvo at gunpoint, just in case if he had tried something stupid. But that was most unlikely. He was extremely nervous, and even if he tried to run, his bad leg would not get him that far. Arvo kept his hands behind his back, and he watched the young girl search in the bag. She eyed at him for a moment, and then he returned the stare with the angry expression. I don't have any weapons, I swear. Well, we just want to be certain you're not dangerous, Jane explained, was that he did not take her eyes off of him. The second he would try anything, Jane would not hesitate to pull the trigger. Clementine focused her attention back to the bag, unzipped it open. Her expression changed to a surprised yet hopeful when she met the contents of the bag. Inside were a bunch of medical supplies, painkillers, bottled water, and syringes, all medical stuff they would need for when Rebecca gave birth. Clementine, is there any weapons? Jane was unaware of the medical supplies inside the bag. She shifted her eyes down for a couple of seconds. Her face changed into surprise when seeing the contents of the bags. Wow, that's a lot of meds. No, Arvo repeated, the same word multiple times as he practically begged them not to take any of the medication. Please, let me keep the medicine, but you can take anything else. That's all for my sister. She's sick. She needs this. She'll be in pain without it, and it will attract those things. It's just you and your sister? Clementine inquired, picked up a bottle of painkillers and examined them. No, we're with a lot of friends, Arvo answered. Back in the woods. Well, we have a couple of people who could use stuff like that, Jane told them in a scary tone that caused them to back up a little. Arvo immediately understood where she was getting at that, but she was planning to take his stuff. He begged them not to take his bag, but his pleas did not get through to Jane. No, wait! What kind of people are you? You take my gun, hold me hostage, and now you want to take my sister's medicine? You are Bolan Old Blood. How could you? Hey, we happen to have people suffering way worse than your sister, Jane clashed in a yelling tone. She shifted her attention back towards Clementine, whose expression did not look like she agreed to this. Clementine, what kind of stuff this is? Luke is still in bad shape from before. Lee looks terrible after what happened with Carver, and Rebecca is in agony. I have people who are in more pain than yours. Your group is not special, Arvo told her, but not before he shifted his attention back towards the young girl, whose name he struggled to remember for a moment. Clementine, isn't it? Please, you have to believe me. Stop with the frickin' lies about your sick sister, Jane shouted, interrupting him from continuing to plead Clementine any further. Please, don't take this stuff and leave her to suffer in pain, Arvo begged. His face looked away, more angry than fearful. She's been through enough already. Is that so? Jane refused to believe anything if he was telling them. She moved closer towards him, still holding at gunpoint. I think you're just some junkie, and the words from people like you are lies. I'm telling the truth, Arvo assured in a panicking tone. I swear on my own life, I am telling the truth. Please. Your words mean nothing to me, Jane replied, shifting her attention back towards Clementine, who still had a thoughtful expression. While trying to make up her mind, "Clementine, the medicine." "No, you cannot take those," Arvo shouted. There was nothing he could do to stop them. "You can't." Clementine had thought about this long, hard decision before she finally made up her mind. She placed the painkillers back in the bag, zipped them up, refusing to turn into a bandit and a thief. "Jane, I'm not robbing anyone. We're giving them these back." Jane was in complete shock to see Clementine's decision. If it was just her, she would not have a second hesitation to take the bag. But she was going to force Clementine to do something if she was never going to do. Besides, if she did force her, Clementine would inform Lee, and he would sure not be happy. "Suspespio. Thank you, Clementine," Arvo thanked her multiple times, proving to her how grateful she was for not taking her stuff. Soon he packed when Jane approached him. Jane growled and grabbed Arvo by the shirt and pulled him closer, holding a revolver against his forehead. "Jane, no!" Clementine told her, refusing to let Jane kill an innocent man. Please don't do this," Arvo begged, still holding up his hands in fear as Jane tightened the grip on him. His face was now even more fearful than before. Jane even thought about killing him for a moment, but she remembered the consequences she would face from their group. Instead of killing him, she decided to make sure he leaned in on the important lesson. "If I see you around here again, I will kill you myself. I don't care if you have a sick sister or not." She finally let him go and shoved him slightly. "Now get out of here." Arvo felt so relieved to get out of there alive. He did not care about his gun, but all he cared about was getting those medicines back. He picked up his bag and it limped back towards the stairs, giving Clementine a look of nods to say thank you. He hopped down each of the steps and haste to get out of the area as soon as possible. The second he was gone, Jane was in complete shock at what she had just done, to what she was turning into. She dropped the revolver and picked up her arms on the railing, her eyes closed, but her voice sounded like she was going to cry. "I can't believe what I'm turning into, trying to rob some kid like a bandit. We should just get to the others and bring them back here," Jane, Clementine suggested, unsure of what else to do. Scolding her to what she just did would not make things worse. Yeah, all right," Jane agreed, turning around as she proceeded to head towards security shutters to finish her job. "Go back and get the others. I'll have this open by the time you get back." Clementine did not say anything, but proceeded to back down the steps. She was willing to take the revolver with her, but left it with Jane just in case if she ran into trouble and needed to defend herself. She got to the bottom of the stairs. She focused the way she came, where she spotted Luke walking down the path, armed with his AK-47. She walked over towards Luke to greet him. Luke and Clementine met around halfway through the same path. Luke was the first to greet her. "Hey, Clem, you and Jane found anything at the observation deck? Carly got worried a little, and she wanted me to check on you guys." "The observation deck does look like a great place to stay for Rebecca to have the baby, but the shutters are closed," Clementine answered, looking back for a moment where she could just see Jane attempting to pick the lock again. "Jane's trying to pick the lock to the gift shop. She told me to go back and get the rest of us." "Could work, I suppose," Luke admitted, deciding to go and check for a moment or so, just in case if they would be forced to use. "I'm gonna go and check it out. I'll meet you back at Parker's Run." Clementine nodded as Luke walked past her and then proceeded towards the observation deck. Now that she did her job, she began to walk back to Parker's Run and check on Rebecca and Sarah to see how they were doing. After all, they both needed the help of time and need. She hoped that Lee was able to be out once he, Bonnie, and Mike returned from the museum.